quick little bit of housekeeping that this session is going to flow into the next one. So now that you've had your break, you are very welcome to just stay in your seats for the next one. But let me get into what we're going to talk about, which is accelerating innovation. As mentioned before, my name is Gaviola. I'm a national reporter and anchor with Global News. I've been covering business for 15 years. And everything that we are going over today falls within the realm of things that I'm interested in, things that I want to learn more about. This discussion is going to be a little bit different than the last one from the previous talk that I was moderating. I want to make clear who it is that I'm sharing the stage with. So if you would just do a brief intro to describe to the audience your connection to the topic and the kind of lens that you're going to bring to our discussion.
Okay, do you want me to start? I'll go, sure. Well, first of all, thank you all for coming and bringing your energy, passion, commitment, wallets to helping Canada be competitive on a global scale. My name is Jeanette Jackson. I'm the CEO of Foresight Canada, a serial entrepreneur. I am an angel investor, and I've helped scale Foresight to become the largest platform that supports clean tech innovators across the country. We're a bit unique. I know we're going to get into some of those discussions, but obviously climate is a critical challenge that we face in Canada and globally, and innovators are the solution, not only from a climate perspective, but if you think about productivity and competitiveness, being able to do more with less, which is really what sustainability is, then we support the largest network of innovators that work in that space.
Okay. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm a managing partner at Tandem Launch. So Tandem Launch is a unique startup foundry based in Montreal. Basically, we build startups from scratch. And the way we do it is we source innovations out of our network of 600 universities worldwide. When we find a technology that's appealing, we assemble a team around it. So we have what we call an entrepreneur in residence program, where people with different backgrounds can meet and find a technology that they find appealing. They spend with us between 12 and 18 months. We're a team of 20 people, very operational. We help them building a demo, getting a little bit of traction. And at the end of the program, they need to recruit a CEO, so somebody that has had an entrepreneurial success, and raise an external round of financing. We've been doing this for more than 12 years. We have 3 funds under management. We're actually closing our 4th fund. Thank you, Pierre, for being part of the 4th fund. We sent the paperwork on Monday. We built 35, it's true. I'm right in the middle. Results are 35 companies, they're worth more than 675 million. They employ a little bit less than 1,000 people. And yeah, very happy to be here today and talk about how we can accelerate innovation in Canada.
So how do we accelerate innovation in Canada? What a fantastic and super big topic. Let's start at the start with the role of accelerators and incubators. Where do you see that in terms of, yes, it is important to start, but the way that you start can also set you up for a certain type of success. It can give you direction. It can give you the focus. Who'd like to take that one?
I'm happy to start. So Foresight, we take a bit of a sort of two-dimensional model to supporting the innovation ecosystem. The first is we have an open platform, so any clean tech company can come to us for supports across the range of ideation, commercialization, and scale-up services. Something that separates us from other accelerators is we not only focus on the business model and the business development. My fundamental belief is that it's actually not hard to get a letter of intent from a customer if you tell them you're going to save them 50% of something. It's can you execute a product and technology roadmap that's going to align with long-term paying customers. And so we have a whole component of programming that supports the technology team within the startup as well. So that broad-based input, this year alone, will support 500 companies across different subsectors of programming. The other aspect of innovation support is doing more sort of strategic calls. So if you think about the demand side, I think there's an opportunity for Canadian innovators to be a little more problem market and data driven. And through things like innovation challenges and engagement with industry, we can actually define subsets of technology problems that need to be solved to reach certain outcomes. And then we can source those innovators and seed them with a little bit of money for a pilot or get them connected to some strategics. Within that whole body of work, we have about 200 EIRs and mentors, so it's actually super fun because I'll be in an event And they'll say, hey, I'm an EIR. It happened yesterday, and it was super exciting. I'm an EIR with Foresight, and I'm supporting, these two companies in, Moncton and Alberta, or Calgary. And, but I do think the most important thing is the opportunity for collaboration and helping companies fast fail, figuring out, do you have that product market fit? Do you have the right team? You just help them ask those questions and give them the support they need to address them, honestly. The best thing you want to happen is if they can't get that product market fit or funding, that they cycle back and come up with new ideas and stay in that innovation ecosystem until they find their path forward. So.
Okay, so basically the role of accelerators, I think is, it's very important because, there are also a lot of accelerators and incubators in Canada right now. So basically, it's based on the fact that starting a company is extremely difficult. The statistics are horrible. So founders feel that if they, well, also I do believe that if you join an accelerator or an incubator, you're gonna increase your chances of raising an external round of financing and having a successful startup. So at large, I think that's a whole concept of how you can get mentorship, how you can have access to capital. Most accelerators and innovators have a great network of investors that they can introduce you to, how you can meet other founders that are having challenges during the first few years, the ideation or recruiting the right skill, the right people. So that's the whole concept of joining an accelerator or an incubator. I think what's great about Tandem Launch is, first of all, we have a seed fund. So it doesn't happen to a lot of accelerators and innovators. I think it helps us to be able to fund the companies up to Series A. So it really, I think we need more accelerators and incubators that have a seed fund that's attached to it. It helps us also to attract external investors to invest in our startups because we can also invest in it. So, and we have 62 investors that are part of that fund, and we have a lot of angels, but we also have institutional investors. So that's a key part of the business model that I think is really helped us accelerating innovation and bringing technologies from universities to the market. And the second part that I think is interesting is you can join Tandem Launch if you don't have an idea or you don't have a co-founder. So basically, if you're somebody who's interested in starting a company in technology, but you don't really have that disruptive, technical, idea, you can come to Tandem Launch and we'll find you. You'll be able to meet a co-founder and find a great idea. And that's a concept that's not, doesn't exist that much across Canada. So, and I do believe that you have talented people that might not have met the right co-founder and that it can build companies. So those are the two aspects that I think are unique about Tandem Launch, the seed fund and the fact that you can be an individual or a technologist and join a program and still be part of a startup.
Yeah, that's the first I've heard. It's almost like speed dating.
It's Tinder for co-founder. That's the word that I'm using. It's Tinder for co-founder. It looks like everybody
you're swiping right.
Well, there's no swiping, but everybody meets each other at the office. So, and then there's a chemistry that needs to happen. I'm sure you've seen it between co-founders for this to work. So
we lose EIRs all the time too. EIRs go into the companies. So once they've mentored or worked with them, and it's hard because then they can't work with some of the other companies that really love. But we want to see that, right? You want to see that experienced talent go in and help move forward faster.
Yeah.
Now, you touched on this. I do want to get into the importance of VC when it comes to scaling, but really it's the scaling piece, that puzzle that I would love to dig into.
Yeah, so once you join an accelerator and incubator, so you have your team, you have to raise your seed round. The VC industry, so you have the choice. The VC is one source of funding, but you can also raise money with institutionals, you can raise money with angels, and you can raise money with the VC, or you can actually have a round that's called a syndicate that can mix and match different kind of investors. The good part about if you want to grow, and obviously you cannot use the traditional way of financing a business like a bank loan because it's too risky. You need to raise money with the venture capital industry. I think that today they bring a lot of value in the sense that they can help you, they bring more than the funding. So first of all, they have access to a larger amount of funding than if you go with only private money. Unfortunately, sometimes it's expensive, especially in deep tech, to commercialize. Like, so you need multi-million dollars, like you need a round of 5 million, 10 million, so they can really accelerate growth in that sense. But they can also bring more, and that's what the venture capital industry is going. Like, I feel that's the future of venture capital industry. They're gonna help you to recruit the right VP sale, who is such a difficult position to fill, like in Canada. They're gonna help you to talk to potential clients. Sometimes they make intros, like the VC can make intros to potential clients. They have a network of potential acquirers if they've been there for long enough, so that they can also introduce you to. And they can also bring their own knowledge. More and more VCs have operational backgrounds, so they know exactly the challenges of the entrepreneurs and the CEOs that are gonna go through in terms of product market fit. But what do you do when, like, I don't know, you didn't meet your budget, which happens 99% of the time in a startup? I mean, is it the product market fit? Is it the right team? Do you have to change the management? So they're all going to be able to provide you insights to help the business to be successful.
Yeah, well, scale for me is a really fun topic. We've supported over 1,200 companies over the last 6 years, so there's quite a lot of data on the reality of what stage these companies are at. I fundamentally believe we have a scale-up problem in Canada because Canada industry and public sector do not adopt the solutions in Canada. So most of the companies that we track that are scaling are actually attacking different markets, so the US, Europe. There are exceptions to the rule. So when I think about the opportunity to help Canadian clean tech companies scale, we are sort of trying to create a wedge on figuring out, like, what are the barriers? What is the challenge? What we've come to realize is that, generally speaking, startups that are trying to scale through public procurement is a long shot. In fact, the best avenue is to sell your technology as a product, service, or solution to an industry player. So think about the cement sector. We've got some really cool technology companies decarbonizing cement. They go to a Lafarge, a Lehigh. Lehigh and Lafarge have the credibility as a verified vendor with municipalities and government. So those are kind of the cycles and the learnings and the tough conversations that we're trying to have on the buyer side, the demand side, because we've seen the supply side, and then they leave. The capital piece is definitely the next fundamental component. So we don't have a fund, but we have a network of a few hundred, several hundred VCs, project financiers, angels, obviously through NACO, and we say, hey, look, how can we curate introductions with the right capital at the right time? And so we have programming that sort of helps vet, create your due diligence components, and do curated introductions to different forms of capital. We've always been bullish from a scale perspective on also helping the private capital find leverage. Canada's traditionally been home to help leverage, to help you scale faster. But of course, I think there's going to be some questions on how long some of those leverages are going to be available. So what you need to scale is you need to have really strong conversations with your customers, that the traction's there. You need to make sure you have the right team in place so that you can continue to show your private capital investors that you are the right team and the right product and technology to invest in.
It's tough to raise the Series A. Are your startups struggling because of the traction? The traction is always the problem.
I mean, if in Canada, if you've solely focused on Canada, yes. Our ventures have tracked about $2 billion in capital. So we track all those metrics, and we track sort of how the transactions that have resulted through our introductions. But I'd say the last 2023 was tough for Series A, Series B. What we're seeing now is there are some capital loosening up. I sit on a few boards of non-Foresight companies in the climate space, and they're able to secure a Series A, B. What I'm seeing is some of the longer deep tech plays that need the 30 to 50 million. There's a really solid 10 to 20 of those that are really compelling, could leapfrog some of the sort of incremental solutions. And there's a question if they'll be able to get funding in that range, and then what's happened is Canadian taxpayers have invested in grants and programs to get those companies to scale, but then those we haven't seen the traction, and you've got this sort of loop. Maybe not, it's a backwards loop, not the forward loop we're looking for, but from a talent perspective, And from an opportunity and quality of technology perspective, we have the right pieces. It's now time to dig in what's really going to move the needle on adoption and scale for the companies that are poised.
Me, what I see is you raise your first round, you have the angels, you have the early stage VCs already. You're happy if you're an entrepreneur and you're there. And then it's so hard to get to the Series A that you're raising all those convertible notes, and people have a first convertible note and then a second convertible note. And I've seen deals where you have 3 convertible notes, and then at a certain point, everybody sits at the board level and like, okay, this doesn't make any more sense for the founders, so we're reopening all the deal, closing all the notes, and that becomes the Series A, like, around. And it's kind of a challenge because, like, I don't know how, like, I mean, it's kind of a challenge because people are basically raising $1.5, $2 million at a time, so the CEO is always fundraising.
It's not enough money either. We're so
it's not enough
modest.
money.
It's like, oh,
so
we're
he's
giving it
always
away.
fundraising and he can't get the traction and he's always focusing on raising the next convertible note. So it's a challenge these days, and it was a challenge also 10 years ago, just for the record. Like, it's tough today, but it has been a challenge for a while. And at a certain point, the VC industry will have to sit down together and just like think about the way that we're funding the startups, because I've seen CEOs that are like, there was COVID and then the financial crisis. I mean, they're tired, you know, at a certain point. So
We're exhausted,
if we want
yeah.
Yeah, they're exhausted. So at a certain point, there needs to be some kind of
I've seen a lot of heads
thinking.
like, oh my God, this
How
is
are we
me.
going to build companies in Canada?
Are we moving the needle? Is there improvement? You said these things existed, these frustrations with both the process and maybe some of the culture 10 years ago. Is it getting better? Is it getting worse?
Well, there are more players. So I think that, I mean, there are more venture capital funds than there were 10 years ago. And what I like is there are more and more venture capital funds that are domain focused. Like 10 years ago, everybody would invest in, it was like kind of generalist. And today, like, you have the clean tech funds, you have the deep tech funds, which I think is great because they also bring domain expertise at the board level. And there are more and more people that have been there for a few years, so they see the challenge, so they're more like aware of, okay, if we stock convertible notes at a certain point, the cap table will not work. So it's easier to have a discussion with them. But it's still a challenge, especially for the founders, to grow and not only do fundraising and actually focus on the commercialization of their technology.
Now, I want to go back to something that was brought up a bit earlier in terms of, it sounds like we have really high quality ingredients in Canada to create these companies that can hopefully eventually scale. There's just something to the secret sauce that needs a little bit of tweaking. With the understanding that you're both from kind of different backgrounds, your specialty being clean tech and then deep tech, which is its own unique thing with many buckets within it. What are some of the most exciting, promising trends that you're seeing? And by that I mean, I'd love for you to share the things that maybe don't get as much attention, but that get you really excited in terms of use cases and potential.
So I'll separate the trends into sort of 2 buckets, maybe some venture-specific trends and then some sectoral trends. So on the venture trends, some of the things that we're encouraging and we're seeing uptick from is companies just being a little more direct with their customers and not afraid to walk away if there's no commitment. You have to. I mean, you have to put something on the line and not be afraid to take a risk. And it's going to save you a lot of sweat and tears. I've, as a CEO of a startup, have been in the bed crying, going, oh my God, how am I going to pay my staff? Long time ago. I decided not to wear that hat for a decade. But we're also seeing that they're getting more bullish on the amount that they're raising, on their value proposition. And if you look at comparables to US companies and whatnot, you know, you get good deals in Canada. And so you don't want to undersell yourself even if you're a good deal. So that just whole mentality around the startups themselves, I think, is important. Now, from a sectoral trends, we see lots of really interesting things. Let's start with hard tech versus digital and AI. About 70% of the companies have some sort of data, AI, digital component to the hardware now, some sort of platform interface. We're We're seeing a lot of innovation on business models, so which is a critical part to accelerating the adoption pathway. So perhaps it's still hard tech, but it's a clean tech as a service model, or carbon management as a service, and that's really providing some interesting opportunities to diversify the type of funding and capital that comes to the table. And then of course there's all the things that you hear, hydrogen, where does that play a role? When food, water security, a lot of really good water technology companies, food productivity companies that are coming to fruition. Obviously, we're looking at energy distribution and power storage, a lot of really cool companies. CCUS has had a hit with Capital Power pulling out of the $2.2 billion project. Had an interesting conversation with someone last night where I was kind of like, thinking, should we panic? Canada has the most carbon capture, utilization, storage technology companies in the world. I think we have 30 that are doing really good work, but they're at point source, whereas if the oil and gas sector is taking a moment to reflect and say, actually, we need to get more into the DAC side of it, they might adopt. I don't know, these are all assumptions, but I think the market is starting to make some decisions, and that should help, focus resources and innovation and where people spend time. But traditionally CCUS has been a real promising pathway for Canadian innovators. So.
Okay, so when I joined Tandem Launch, I've been in this ecosystem for 10 years, 12 years. At the beginning, when we wanted to recruit founders, we had to do evangelism about entrepreneurship. We were pitching entrepreneurship 10 years ago. My job was not cool at all. So I think that what is great about today's world is there's been this push about entrepreneurship and innovation, and it's actually yes, you're competing between startups for technical resources, but I mean, if you want to join a startup, you're not really competing with the large companies anymore because they want to be part of the startup, and the social status of being an entrepreneur went up dramatically. So I think that's a great sign of, as a society, how much we value entrepreneurship and innovation compared to a decade ago. Same thing with deep tech. Deep tech 10 years ago, oh my God, I mean, it was horrible. How are you going to raise an external round of financing? Can you list me the potential co-investors? And we were working with a lot of strategics, actually, because it was extremely difficult to get venture capital, investing in deep tech companies. And we also had to, we didn't even talk, we were investing in computer vision. We were not talking about AI, we were talking about human-machine interaction. I mean, all those, and today, deep tech is super trendy. I mean, people want to invest in intellectual property. Technology transfer is also something that everybody is talking about. And people see the power of AI. I mean, for the 4 or 5 years, although there's still there's still a lot of room for new innovations in that sector. And when you talk about deep technology, deep tech and smart materials or new technologies for food tech, I mean, people are actually interested in it, and there's an interest also to invest in a company that has disruptive technology. So I think that those are two elements that are very promising for the future compared to what I was seeing 10 years ago. Also, what I like is also that we have more and more players that are investing in startups and private. Today, the banks are investing. You have a program with RBC, National Bank Invest in Funds. We didn't see the bank at all 10 years ago. So you have more players than you had that are willing to write checks. And you also have angels co-investing with VCs, which is also there are more and more private investors that are sometimes they're professionals. They're not all entrepreneurs. They see it as an asset class of investment. So it's more and more.
And
the
later stage too, right? So the assumption is that there's a little.
And the access to deal flow has improved dramatically for everybody that wants to invest in a private company in Canada. So which I also think is great.
That feels like a very kind of hopeful note. I do want to ask, what is the number one thing that you'd like this audience to remember about our discussion here? Because there are many talks. Plant that seed of the one thing you want people to think about, to remember after this conversation's done.
Well, I'm really bullish on adoption right now. So if you are talking to any of your municipal governments, if you're working with industry, you're within industry, you're a strategic in industry, please really figure out what you should be leaning into and start adopting the technologies that are all ready to go before we lose them to other countries.
Sounds like a bit of a warning as well.
Well, I would say continue to promote private investment, entrepreneurship, innovation, because I do believe that it's the future of the economy in Canada.
Thank you very much for your time and your
Thank
attention.
you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Great.
ladies. That was great.